And lawyers, guns, and money.
We probably should have devoted an entire episode to this, the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And you might be asking, well, what's the sports law tie-in? Putting aside the issue of sports law, she was a legendary, legendary figure in the law, a pioneer. One of the first female Supreme Court justices. She was a trailblazer in almost every respect, and she fought vigorously for women's rights. She is truly a historic figure, but she does have a sports law connection.
What is that sports law connection, Dan?
Okay, back in 2018, she was one of the dissenting judges in the Murphy versus NCAA case, the lawsuit that overturned the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. PASPA was overturned in a majority opinion written by Justice Alito on the basis that this federal ban on state-authorized sports betting intruded upon states' rights in violation of the 10th Amendment. She wrote a dissenting opinion in that case, and if Justice Ginsburg's opinion had been the majority opinion, I basically would still be at my old law firm. I wouldn't have my own firm focusing on sports betting law, so I suppose I shouldn't be thankful to Justice Ginsburg for that opinion, but it is notable that she played a role in the sort of the probably one of the most important gambling cases ever to reach the Supreme Court. And several years earlier, in a very well-known Voting Rights Act case called Shelby versus Alabama, she wrote a dissenting opinion in that case in which she suggested that perhaps the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, which was later overturned a couple of years later, perhaps that law runs afoul of the equal sovereignty doctrine on the basis that it treats states differently. And for a while, a lot of scholars in sports law and people who are following this case were kind of seizing upon Justice Ginsburg's footnote in the dissent as perhaps an indication that PASPA's days were numbered, albeit under the equal sovereignty doctrine and not under the 10th Amendment anti-commandeering principle. So if you're a Supreme Court justice for that length of a period of time, you're going to preside over cases that impact sports law. You have the American Needle case. You have all these important sports law controversies that reach the Supreme Court, and the justices, obviously, as one of 9, play a very important role in how these laws evolve or are overturned or modified.
Role in PAPSA in that big case, she was actually, if Justice Ginsburg had her way, you would still be an appellate lawyer. Yeah, so
I was there
for a period of time. You were not a fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You were very much against her.
I didn't disagree necessarily with anything she wrote. Listen, she played a role in this case, and the decision pretty much broke down on party lines. I think most of the Republican justices voted to overturn PASPA, and the liberals, such as Ginsburg, oh God, I'm at a loss. I think 3 voted against, or 3 voted to uphold the federal law, 6 voted in favor of overturning it. I was in the court that day. I was there as a member of the media. I had a media pass through my work for Forbes magazine. For Forbes, I'm still an online contributor, and now you're an online contributor. And on the basis of my affiliation with Forbes, I got a press pass. But where did the Supreme Court place me? I was all the way in the back. The press row in the US Supreme Court was behind these Roman columns. The last row, I only saw, I think, 1 justice. All of them were blocked by the columns that I was sitting behind. And I think I got a glimpse of Ruth Bader Ginsburg when I peered my head forward. But I think the only justice that I really had a plain view of was Justice Gorsuch as the most junior justice. And the lesson learned from that day is, if you're a member of the Supreme Court bar, screw the press pass. You get a better seat if you wait on the lawyer's line as a member of the Supreme Court bar. And I remember that day, Ryan Roddenberry, a fellow sports law attorney. He wasn't there covering the case as a member of the press, although he wrote about it, I think, for ESPN, but he went there as a member of the Supreme Court bar. He got there at 6 a.m, waited in line for an hour or two, and had like the equivalent of like fifth row center seats for Springsteen, whereas I was in the blue seats of Madison Square Garden. So that's my memory of that day, and it is the one and only time that I've been within, remote eyesight of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And may she rest in peace. And we're about to go into probably the most tumultuous period of recent political history in trying to nominate, or at least consider the nomination of her successor during an election season.
Yeah, so just quick. I mean, I obviously went to law school. I read a ton of her dissenting opinions. I learned a lot about Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the past few days. There's a fantastic documentary on Judge Ginsburg on Hulu. I learned a lot. Dan, maybe everyone. I tell everybody to watch it. It goes through a lot of great opinions that we learned in con law. But one that I thought was just a really fascinating story. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, obviously went to Harvard Law, and there was a period of time where her husband was also a fellow lawyer, was diagnosed with cancer. And Ruth,
Marty Ginsburg,
Judge,
for a while, the foremost tax law authority in the United States. Talk about a power couple.
Did not know that.
But partner at Weil Gotshal for many years. Imagine the foremost tax law authority in the country married to a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, if you watch this this documentary, it doesn't really, I mean, it says he was a lawyer, it says he was a partner at a firm. It doesn't really get into, it kind of paints him, and which, I think is part of Ruth Ginsburg's, her MO, that roles in the household don't have to be so traditional. So I thought it was just a really interesting light. He was the cook, right? And apparently she couldn't cook. And the son in the documentary jokes, I still can't look at swordfish the same way after what mom did to it. But yeah, it's an interesting documentary. The only kind of thing I wanted to point out, I don't look at Ruth Ginsburg and think that this is somebody that is up all night working. I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm an insomniac. I know Dan, we're 12:05 Eastern time. Dan and I are up late. I'm probably not going to go to bed until 2 or so, but that's just the way my mind works. I did not know during law school that Ruth Ginsburg, because her husband was diagnosed with cancer, she would study her, go to the library all day. She'd go home, play with her, her kid, and put her to sleep for, the 2 hours, 4 to 6. And then, because she had such an insane motor, she would work and study her husband's cases because he was diagnosed with cancer from 6 to 3, 4 in the morning. She would do double the work on top of taking care of her kid. And then, as an adult and as a, sitting justice, she then just burned the midnight oil. So her kids were talking about how at 3, 4 in the morning, they would wake up in the middle of the night and see their mom, writing opinions. So, I don't know who else is an insomniac out there, but there was one of us that made it all the way to the Supreme Court. So don't let anybody tell you need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Sometimes 2 to 4 is okay. It's a great documentary though. Definitely check that out.
Besides her brilliance, besides her industriousness and work ethic, she brought a humanity and compassion to the role. And we won't see the likes of her on the Supreme Court for quite a while. And if ever, she's sort of the last of that breed, and she'll be severely missed. So we did one topic, but we still had our typical length of a show. But hopefully, we're able to get into these topics and really explore them, with some level of detail and insight. So Dan, as always, it is a pleasure to shoot the breeze with you on sports law week after week after week, and hopefully the week ahead will bring us some new cases and some new exciting sports law controversies.
Yes, Dan, likewise. So we will put this episode in the books. And as always, for updates on the latest in sports law, if you have any questions, Dan Wallach on Twitter and Instagram at Wallach Legal. Myself, Dan Lust at Sports Law Lust, and the show Conduct Detrimental is at Con Detrimental. So we will again put this episode in the books, and we will see you next week on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.